Hello, all the crazy people out there. My name is Michael. I like wizards and dragons and making games, and welcome back to Making Games. So if I recall, last time we got a lot by way of 3D collisions finished, and it works pretty well, all things considered. That jump is still extremely high. I feel like I should really dial that down a little bit. But anyway, we've got a 3D collision system working with various basic shapes. That's pretty nice. That particle fountain does not have any collision to go with it. So last time, I think I left it a little bit open as to what I was going to do today. There are some things that were still like work in progress, like entity systems and 3D collision system climbing. I've been talking about wanting to do climbing. Do want to get on that. In case there's been any confusion, I haven't seen anyone ask about this, but this is sort of a thing that fades in and out of the GameMaker consciousness. This is not in reference to an entity component system. This is entity as in just like a generic, noun in the game world. ECS is kind of its own whole thing. I have a passing interest in how it works, but I'm not interested enough to actually like do it in this game. There was this bug, which I believe I shouted out and did not fix last time, and some other generic like gameplay, moving around, platforming things. So I'm not sure if I'll deal with things like climbing today. I will if there's time, but I do definitely want to get started with loading object collision shapes from the file and not just hard coding everything. That's one of those things where the longer I put it off, the more work it's going to be. Is there anything else relevant to that? Add a nicer system for interfacing between entities and collisions. That's going to be related. So those two I definitely want to get in today, and everything else is going to be just a nice bonus. I don't want this video to go as long as the last couple have been, because the last couple have been a little bit longer than I wanted them to. So as for collision shapes and assigning them automatically, my fancy 3D model like packaging tool thing, I have a bit of functionality for adding collision shapes, and let's see if I can remember how I did this originally. All right, I'm gonna want that to be double what I just said. So I can define a couple of basic shapes. So that's going to be boxes, spheres, and capsules. I have a feeling most of what I'm going to do is going to be boxes and spheres. As discussed last time, capsules are a tiny bit expensive. These buttons for triangle meshes don't actually do anything. I have not implemented those yet. Might eventually, but right now I'm mostly interested in spheres and boxes. I'd like to set this up so that it works kind of automatically, and so that I don't have to, manually type in the dimensions and coordinates and whatever of all these collision shapes. It would be nice to have some button in this UI that's like add a shape from like the bounding box or that kind of thing. But for now, I'm just going to assign these manually. Give me a moment. And with that, we have a couple of collision shapes defined for the barrel, the block, the treasure chest, the rock pile, that's a sphere, skybox and ground don't have collision shapes, and the player, which is also a sphere. Somewhat maybe unexpectedly related to this is I mentioned having the camera like looking over the player's shoulder instead of like looking straight through the back of the player's head for the sake of making it easier to see what's in front of you and not having the player's body blocking your view. And the way that I've done some other things in games which I've used this for is to add an additional collision shape. For example, what would it be? Say X maybe like 0, Y can be like 32, and Z can be like 8. And let's say -8, -16, and that could be like the point where the camera is looking at, looking over the player's shoulder. Can I set your size to 0? I can't. I'm not sure if I want to do that for this game, at least not right now. But it's an interesting thought experiment, which I may or may not come back to later. So let me save all these. We are not going to save these in the WizardX folder. And immediately nothing should change. So my system, when I load that file that I've written in the past, should take care of any collision shape data, and we should also obviously have the vertex buffers to go with them. But when you load in the penguin file, we should also be loading a set of 3D collision shapes. If I were to just show debug message any box-related shapes that we load, we should be able to see a bunch of data printed out to the console, and we can access that in one of the variables that are included with the objects that are loaded. Where are they? Here. So we've got our list of vertex buffers. Obviously, we've got some collision shapes, some physical bounds, render method, and that sort of thing. And I'd like to get that working nice and easily with the game. This is going to be very abstract even on my standards. I hope this isn't boring you all. Anyway, let me go and create myself a GameMaker object, and that's going to be in gameplay, right? So we can create ourselves, let's duplicate the entity object. This can be obj underscore like 3D object. It's not the most interesting name in the world. We can assign that as our parent. We can, if we want to, call the event inherited, because we will be messing around in the create event a little. And are there any variable definitions? There are. All right, so when I control D that and set the parent, the one variable definition also got duplicated. I feel like that's a thing GameMaker should fix, but I'm not going to lose sleep over it. And let's define a 3D mesh that is going to be kind of our thing. Good, we are set to invisible. I'm going to, I think. When it comes to the player, how is the player's, or at least the NPC's collision defined? Player? Okay, so you have a C shape, a C object, and those are like kind of going to be something that's relevant to like all these. So let's go into 3D object. Let's say let's also initialize C shape to undefined and C object to undefined. I'm going to go and create. Oh, you know what? Since you can technically have more than one collision shapes for one of the 3D objects, that should probably be an array. And most of the time, for most objects, it's probably going to be 0. An array of one element, rather. But just in case there's like a really funny shaped object that happens to be comprised of like multiple blocks or multiple spheres or whatever, we'll account for that. So let's see, when it comes to adding things, I'm going to write myself a method in the 3D object create event, and this is going to be self.set mesh, and that's going to be something like the block mesh object or whatever, loaded from the file. And let's see, we can have our block shape. Oh man, this is gonna be all right. First, let me loop over mesh dot collision shapes. And I might as well make that full screen because I'm going to be here for a while. I'm going to have to think about this. The penguin classes is where let's split this window in half. All right, so as long as I like remember what the variable names are here, I should be okay. This is going to be an ob. This won't be an ab because this can have rotation, I think, anyway. Let me make sure I'm loading that, actually. orientation X, Y, Z, Y. Yeah, okay. So you're gonna be an ob, and the sphere is just a sphere. So everything's gonna have a position or a scale or whatever. Okay. None of these have an ID or anything, but I can take the dumb route and say if is instance of, and we can say if shape data is an instance of, for example, let's do spheres first because that's probably going to be the easiest. Our collision shape is going to be new call sphere. Our position is going to be so we're going to copy all the values out of the collision shape that was loaded into the what am I doing? Into the call sphere, and then our object is going to be equal to a new call object. The shape can be the collision shape. The reference, and this is actually going to be important now because we need to refer back to the GameMaker object that this corresponds to. That's going to be our ID, our mask, and our group is going to be that. All right, and then I suppose obj, what is it? Obj demo, obj game. I don't know why that was showing up in code help, but collision.add our object. And we will also keep track of the shape in the object. I'm just going to pluralize these because it's a list. So that'll account for if one of these shapes is a sphere. We might also want to, for example, account for a box. And to do that, we can say a new call ob. The position is going to be, boy, I'm gonna have to think about this. Why am I dumb today? It should be shape data dot position dot x yz. The position of the ob is going to be very much the same, but we're also going to need the size, or the scale rather, and we're going to need our orientation matrix, which I believe is going to be an actual like one of those fancy like matrix 4 objects, correct? How did I set that up? Come on, it hasn't been that long since I thought about this. Okay, so I'm gonna basically like turn this into one of the matrix 3s, say matrix 3.get rotation matrix, and we should be on our way in that department. This is definitely like a good test to see what my collision system needs. Get orientation matrix. Get rotation matrix. And it like in order to be a little bit easier to use. So how does it go? Like x.x, x.y, or yeah, x.x, x.y, x.z. So that's going to be shape data dot orientation dot x.x, y, z, and like that. Okay. I think that shouldn't like crash the game at least. I hope. I'm just realizing now that the way that I've done the capsule collision shapes is that they have a radius, a length, and an orientation instead of having like 2 endpoints. So I don't even know if I want to include capsules in this because that sounds like a pain. To to like convert between a radius, a length, and an orientation, and a radius, a length, and like 2 start and end points or whatever, or a radius and 2 start and end points. So I'll leave that for now, and if we want to, I'll leave a comment warning my future self. Let's see, if we generalize this a little bit, I can get rid of some redundant code, because I can get rid of all this, and all that's really going to change in each of these 2 cases is going to be what defining the shape is. And then I can say like if shape if the shape is not undefined, object is a new object representing the collision shape, add the object, push the 2 things onto the lists. And that's a little bit less redundant code. Okay. Hopefully, if I do this, the game won't crash. I know I kind of added a lot. If I say instance create depth, let's say, I don't remember what it was, 200, 0, 200, obj, 3D object. What did I call it? It was a local variable instead of a singleton. That should at least add some collision things to the world. This isn't going to work great right off the bat. If this works the way that I expected it to, I will actually be getting stuck at my original position. And if that's what happens, I'll explain it in a minute. And also, if that's not what happens, I'll also explain that in a minute. No, I'm not. All right. All right, so to my first bit of explaining, this is not setting any like any transformation in space. So the collision object here is just going to be, it's going to have itself a position and a scale, but I created the object like in the middle of the room. So the shape is not going to be transformed off into the middle of the room, and it'll still be like around the world origin. With that said, what exactly, why isn't that happening? Like, I sort of suspect that, you know what I could do that would make my life a little bit easier, by the way, is to actually draw what we're looking at with obj 3D object for now. That'll probably be obj entity later. So, for example, we can draw ourselves. Let's go to the draw event. Leave the rotation alone for now. Go back to the identity matrix when we're done. And with this, we are invisible. With this, I should be able to at least see a block, probably at about the same position that we were before. Nope. Did I mess up the axis? Mysterious. Are we never actually putting this in the collision shapes array. What is it? I've already forgotten. It's penguin, not collision shapes. Is that all? Is that the only thing the problem is? Like, is that actually the only problem? Please tell me that I'm gonna get stuck by the world origin now. Okay, that is amazing. It took me like 2 seconds to figure out what was going on there. And I'm gonna guess about probably like half of you saw this before me. And are probably laughing at me, but the numeric multiplication for a vector. Oh, how did that go so long without it? How did that escape my notice for so long? Is the question. Like, I'm amazed that didn't cause problems in the actual 3D collision videos. But now if I run the game, it at least shouldn't crash. And we'll probably... Do we have a different crash now? Oh, is that a vector 3? Oh, I know why that is. Okay, that is also kind of dumb. That is also just a case of me forgetting how my own system works. And that is going to be that I don't want this to be any new matrix 4. That needs to be a matrix 3. Is that documented anywhere? It's probably about time that I start writing documentation. Like what types? Yeah, for example, that should be a mat 3. I should probably think about starting to write better documentation for this. Okay. Future self, I hope you're taking notes as you edit this to see what, like, needs doing.
Hey.
Alright, so it worked without crashing. I am indeed stuck at the world origin, which I believe is the incorrect behavior that I should be getting. So I'm going to assume that everything is working as intended. Alright. So if not for the fact that I'm apparently reading out a bunch of zeros from the orientation from the penguin file, which is a bug that I will also have to fix, I could just say new matrix 3 composed of that, but until then, I'm just gonna say... Actually, you know what? Why do I do everything the hard way? That's a identity matrix 3. Okay. So that's going to be part of the work that I have to do for this. I don't know why I thought this would be going fast, but I can start committing changes, I think, because I think there's going to be a few changes that I'm going to want to think about doing, to think about committing. So next there's going to be the matter... Oh, you know what else I'll do? I'll set the mask in the group default arguments to the set mesh method over here, just in case. By default, 1 and 1 is fine. For most things, 1 and 1 will be fine. But just in case you want to have your collision shape in a different mask or group, you can set that. All right. There's also the matter of setting a transform. So for some of these, at least for position, if I say like set position, and this can take care of updating the position of a collision object in the world. Hang on, let me think about that. So if I go into call world, how is removing stuff handled? Do I have to like... Ooh, you know what? This can be simplified because there is now an array get index function built into GameMaker. That can be simplified. I like that because manually searching an array is kind of annoying. And need an empty scrap of paper to serve as my to-do list. Okay, I've written that down for later. Anyway, the remove method for the quad tree and the oct tree checks to see if an object is in the list of collision objects first, and if it is, we're going to recursively remove it. If it's not, then we'll just not do anything. I personally am a fan of instead of saying like set position and then you set the XYZ, if I can get away with it, I'll just say update collision positions, and then I will remove each of the respective collision objects, and then I will re-add them. There may actually be like an update. Is there not an update? Okay, so for some reason I thought I might have like written a method right into the collision world octree class that did that for me. But anyway, these don't have... Okay, so objects don't have any transform information with them. It's only the shapes. The bullet collision library, which this is modeled after, actually does. The transforms belong to the collision objects. The collision shapes are just the geometric templates, but no matter. We're going to say dot remove. Later on, we will also say dot add. We will also update the positions because at least the sphere and the ob, they both are going to have a dot position vector 3. And until I start dealing with the actual rotations, I want to say that'll be a pain in the neck dealing with rotations and change in rotations and that sort of thing, but it actually might not be. But we'll see when I get there. So for the object.shape.position.x is going to be self.x. We'll look up the y and the z. And now we have a way of updating the positions of the collision shapes. I will have a bit of a creative way of testing that in a moment, but firstly, so the test box is going to be this. Test box.setMesh. Test box.update collision positions, and we should have, after almost an hour of real time, I hope this is going to be like 20 minutes of game video time, something not set before reading it. Yes, whatever. Hopefully this will be about 20 minutes of video time, because there was a lot of me being done here. And okay, so I can collide with something. It's bigger than it should be. Why is that? This recording ended up going on for another hour, which means that I'm going to have to do something that I've never had to do in one of these Let's Make a Game videos before, and that's going to be to just chop this 1.5. So this is as good of a stopping point as any. So we've got some kind of collisions being attached to game objects automatically when we add them to the game world. But this is, of course, going to need quite a bit more work, and we'll get to that next time. So my name is Michael, I like Wizards and Dragons and making games. If you want the code for this, look for the GitHub repository down in the video description. I have a Patreon, so if you want to contribute to the channel, links to that can be found in all the usual places. Otherwise, I hope you all find this interesting, and I will see you all later. Special thanks to Zenjamin, Vitro V, Squarecrow, Syndra Larson, Manta Ray, Harold Guidry, GameMaker, Edward Holt, DJ Gibbles, and Army Armbuster for supporting these videos. If you want to contribute to the channel, head on over to the Patreon page down in the video description to join the fun.